Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of It's No Secret with Dr. T. This show is brought to you by me and my book, It's No Secret There's Money in Small Business. Now, my guest today is really interesting. Actually, I think he's pretty famous, even though he may not admit it himself. He has been a journalist, he moved into advertising, and then he shifted his writing disciplines again and became an author of best-selling thrillers, and he's got a following all over the world. His name is David Rollins. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, especially after that intro, making me sound like the man.
You are the man. You've done so much. What I found really interesting, it was Eric Hunley put us in touch with each other, and he spoke so highly of you. And he said, you've got to get this guy on your show. He's got such an interesting story, and he's done so much. And I want to talk about everything. So I don't know if you've got a time limit today, but I'm not going to have a time limit. We'll just keep talking until we get bored with each other.
Well, I hope we go longer than 10 minutes then.
Yeah. Okay, our plan is to go longer than 10 minutes. So you've done heaps. You've done a lot of stuff. You started as a journalist, and then you moved into advertising. What gave you that shift?
I was racing motorcycles at the time, and actually my journalism started in the motoring group of like a ACP, which is, as you know, pretty big publishing group. And I did my cadetship there, and I was racing motorcycles. And there are all the guys, out there who had really great, machinery, worked in advertising. I thought, how the hell do they afford that? And I found out they worked in advertising, and those guys got paid a lot. So I went, I want to do that. It was pretty shallow, but that's advertising.
So you took that. So because of journalism, obviously you like to write. Most journalists do, I assume. What made you take the shift to start writing novels, that like thriller type novels? And your character, I've noticed you've just released your latest book. I think it's book number 7 with Vin Cooper, who is the main character.
Yeah, book number 11, including all of them. But number 7 with Vin. I got bored in advertising, and I had my own agency, and after a while, when you do the same job, and I'm sure everyone has, I know for a fact everyone has the same thing. Your job, no matter what you do, eventually feels like Groundhog Day. And I was in that space. Every meeting was like every other meeting, and they all went too long, and they all had the same outcome. And I just got really bored. So, I'd always fancied myself as a writer, and arrogant enough, I guess, to think I could pull it off. And so I just sat down one day and started writing. I thought I had a pretty good idea. Yeah. And, coming from the copywriting side of advertising, having an idea is paramount. And that was really the start of it. That was 1999.
Okay, so when you made the shift, did you jump out of marketing altogether and just go bang straight into writing, or you just did it on the side until it actually took off?
I did it on the side until it took off. And in fact, I got to the point where I was about to toss it all in, because I was working in advertising. It's a hard way to make a living, to be honest. The hours are pretty long, and you've got to be utterly committed, otherwise you get stomped on.
And when you say advertising, were you sort of, this is going to sound, if just anyone younger who's listening to this will just sort of have no idea what I'm talking about, but were you sort of like a Darren Stevens in the modern world?
Mate, I'm old enough that I actually get the reference. I'm not really sure what Darren did. He kind of did everything. I was a copywriter, so I worked with an art director, and we come up with the stuff. It's but I was also the creative director, so I was the boss, I guess, the creative editor in chief, if you like, of the agency. And that's what I did. Arrogant enough, I can't remember where we were, but arrogant enough to think that I could pull that off. And, that's what I started to do. I just wanted to dig a tunnel out of advertising, and that's right. I was going to give it up because I was, working long days, and then working and, I don't know, till 11 o'clock every night once I got home and put the kids to bed, because I had young kids back then. I couldn't keep going. And then after the 4th book, I got a major deal from a publisher in the United States, and that's what kept me hanging around.
Okay, so if we just go back to your first book, so when you finished doing your first book, one, you would have felt great when you did that. Was it a success? Would you say the first book was a success? And yeah, so you did the first book. Did that was that life changing when you did that, or was it just like self accomplishment?
It was life changing to the extent that I realized I could do it, and also I realized that it was what I wanted to do. But it didn't, financially it wasn't a massive, success. But you have to put this into context. In Australia, you sell 5,000 books, you're a bestseller.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that does not pay the bills.
No, it definitely won't. But it's a stepping stone as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. So to that extent, yes, it was life changing. And the publisher, also the thing is, what you have to understand, back then, it's before the internet and before Amazon and a completely different world. We had lots of bookshops everywhere. We had so many, book chains. It was a whole different ballgame. And you had the book that you write, your first book had to be better than anything else out there, because otherwise, why would anyone bother? Right?
That's true.
So, I persevered and got over the line eventually. And the publisher, I sent out 76 sample chapters to 76 publishers around the world, publishers of, mass fiction.
Yeah.
And got 76 rejections. And ultimately, I was picked up by one of those people who rejected me, because I discovered that every publishing company around the world has a slush pile, and that slush pile gets added to daily, and they can't afford to have anyone read those books anymore. So what they do is they rely on really good agents to essentially be their readers, because they figure, well, if the agent thinks it's good and the agent only has 8 hours in the day to make a buck, then they're only going to promote the writers that they feel have got what it takes. So you get a good agent, you're well on the way to getting a book published. Mind you, a lot of that's changed now, because the book is very different.
Yeah, I was going to say that, when you wrote your first book compared to writing your most recent book that came out early this year, called Kingdom Come, have you noticed a big change over those years?
Huge. Okay, so when I wrote Rogue Element way back in 1999, there were 4 book chains, at least, in Australia. There was Dymocks, Borders, Collins, and Angus and Robinson. And they were all massive. They had stores everywhere, as well as the usual suspects at the airports and the department stores and, what have you. You couldn't walk a block without finding a bookshop. Now, only Dymocks remains as a chain. All the rest have gone. And, of course, people don't buy books when they get on planes anymore much, because there are so many more entertainment options.
That's true as well,
It was a book, right? So, the world has changed considerably. Now, it's easier to write a book. It's just probably harder to find an audience.
Yeah.
You could always what are they called? Vanity publish a book. So you write a book and then you get, some vanity publisher. That's not a very good word, but basically a self-publishing company to produce the book for you. Now, once upon a time, you'd do that and you'd have 5,000 in your garage, and in 5 years' time, you'd have, maybe you've given away 10 to your close friends and relatives.
You still have 4,900.
Okay, so now you don't have to do that. Like, you can publish the book and put it on Kindle Direct or, somewhere like that. So it's out there in the world, but getting people to find it is a whole other ballgame. So you then have to be your own marketer, because quite honestly, the only reason that you would go with a publisher is their marketing. The fact that they, will basically promote your book to, what publishers that remain, and also the reviewers out there in the world, and, other sort of websites where they feel they can club together enough of a segment to make it worth their while to get you published.
Yeah.
I mean, you can publish a book now quite easily. It's getting it marketed. That's the problem. And that's probably why it's, if you really believe in yourself as a first-time writer, it's probably best to go the legacy publishing route, to go to a publisher and get the book published, because at least then, you will get the book sold to enough people to at least call yourself a bestseller. And like I said, in Australia, that's, I don't know, 5,000 sales.
So you've written 11 books, and then with Vin, you've got 7 books with Vin in it. Do you find it easier to write with the same character? Yeah, because there'd be certain people that would have read the 6 books previously, and then all of a sudden they go, okay, I need to know what Vin is up to now. What is he doing against ISIS? Is he going to kick their butt?
Yeah, so that is, I think probably my most popular books are the Vin Cooper books. I've done some other books which have reviewed really well, but they just haven't found the audience. So, there's something about that character that people like. And really, storytelling is not necessarily about what happened next. It's about what happened to the person I like in the book. So, yeah, there's something about that character that strikes a chord with people. But I have had a bit of a bumpy ride with this latest book because it sets... I try and set the books in the real politic of the period. So all my books, they're not fictional countries, and the politics that exist in those countries are not, fictional. I try and strive for as much realism as I can. And this book has taken a look at America, and of course we have a particular guy in the White House at the moment who's a character. He's a great character. Right?
We were talking about him before,
Yeah, he's a great character. And anyway, so I've got him in the book, and the way I portrayed him, which is essentially just him, right? A lot of people have taken exception to that, and, I've been punished. I don't know about sales so much, but certainly, I've had some really, sort of terse reviews from people who in America who are really annoyed that I've basically made their elected officials out to be buffoons, was one word someone used.
Yeah, but isn't that what movies do all the time?
Well, I just kind of think I think America, I love America. And
so do I.
I love Americans. Great country, huge force for good out there in the world. But they do have a glass jaw when it comes to themselves. They just don't take anything they see as criticism, and particularly for their elected leaders, which, in Australia, God.
Oh, we take the piss out of each other all the time.
Take a number and stand in line, get a tomato and start throwing, right? Yeah. America, it's a really different thing. The office of the president, no matter who's in it, is kind of sacrosanct. You've got to be really careful how you deal with that character. Anyway.
That's quite funny. It's quite funny you should say that, though. It's true. They could have people who did not vote for Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump was ringing them up and said, I want to come over to your place for dinner and there's going to be cameras, people would line up, have their photo taken, even though they would say that they never voted for him, they didn't like him. But he's still the president of the United States and they respect the office. I
would go even further than that to say that if he said, I'm going to shoot someone in Times Square, who wants to volunteer their firstborn? I'm sure there'd be a few Democrats that'd go, oh, president, having my son shot by the president?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know whether you remember that. Donald Trump said, I could shoot someone in Times Square and it wouldn't matter. People would still vote for me.
Did he actually say that?
Yeah, he did. Hence that reference. Anyway, that's the story with that book.
So the character himself, though, like I'd say, once you've written 7 books about him, you start to get an emotional connection to him too, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, no, you do.
Do you see? Is part of you in him, the character? Do you take some of your traits and you go, yeah, no, that's definitely me I'm writing about?
Yeah, yes and no. Look, there is obviously something of you in every character, which is a little bit scary because some of my characters are pretty fucked up. But Vin, he's like a really good buddy. He's so much funnier than I am. He's, he's so much cleverer than I am. But I love hanging out with him.
Is he sort of like Bond? Is he got a bit of Bond in him? Is it that type of?
No,
or is he
no.
more? Or is he more like your Jocko, the Navy SEAL?
No, he's neither really. I mean, he's a kind of he's a bit like Jack Reacher's character.
Okay, yeah.
Or Jack Reacher rather, the character, but with a sense of humour.
Yeah, Jack Reacher does not have a sense of humour, does he?
Not really, no. So, okay, so Cooper is deeply cynical and sarcastic.
Yeah.
But I guess he's probably, as far as I know, the only left-leaning, kind of action hero around, as far as I know. He shoots himself in the foot all too often.
Yeah.
Sleeps with the wrong woman, kind of gets it wrong every now and then. But ultimately, his heart's in the right place.
So he's real.
And weirdly, 50% of my readers are women, and usually for in that sort of genre, the women kind of stay away. But he's kind of a bit of a rough diamond. And anyway, when I finished writing the books, I just feel a little bit down, because I go, well, that's it. Finn's gone.
Yeah.
After I spent a year writing this thing and living in the guy's shoes and replaying all the, the dialogue and the relationships backwards and forwards and inside out, to try and get the right rhythm, the right voice and all the rest. He really does. The character becomes part of you. And, my wife would say that sometimes she doesn't know where the character stops and I begin. But, like I said, Cooper is so much better at so many things. To me.
So with your background, obviously journalism, but with the marketing, has marketing or having that marketing background helped you or hindered you when it's come to writing the book and maybe even promoting the book?
Yeah, I think it's probably been a help. It's interesting, actually, point to raise, to be honest. My first book dealt with an Australian soldier in the SAS, and he's one of the characters, and that was the first book. And the second book, I took him forward because the publisher said, well, it's not enough that you write one book. We need two.
Yeah.
Right? So off you go.
I have heard that with publishers too, that they don't want a one-hit wonder. They want to know that you've got multiple. They want you to approach them and say, and this character can go here, here, and here. And they want to see something. If it's a success, it's got longevity over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, that's true. So... Sorry, what was the question again?
I can't remember either.
I'm sort of going around in the mulberry bush. So...
I know, I was asking you about, with your marketing, has it been has it helped or been a hindrance to your writing?
Yes, okay. So that first character was an Australian character. And I think after that book, I kind of felt that, the marketing brain took over, and I thought, maybe this is a bad thing. I mean, who'll know? But I kind of thought, well, and a lot of people aren't going to like this, but I thought, you know what? If I want to sell to a wider audience, are Americans going to buy? That's the audience, really, that you got to tap into. Are they going to buy an Australian hero? Probably not. I mean, what sort of person is going to save the world? Is it an Australian or an American? Well, I think we know the answer to that.
Yeah, Mad Max.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I thought, look, I also thought my first character was way too wooden. I needed to write in a different voice, with a different kind of character, that gave me the freedom to be, the cynical bastard that I am.
Yeah.
And so I shifted gears into an American character who's hung around all these years.
No, but I think that's a smart move because you like using your marketing background. And I talk to a lot of people about marketing. A lot of people listen to the show want to pick up marketing tips, and I think that knowing your audience or who you're writing for is really, really important.
Yeah, if you want to have any kind of commercial success, you can't ignore, who is going to buy the product, and a book is a product.
Yeah.
And also, then there's the marketing of the thing, thereafter. I mean, the honest truth is you really should spend... writing the book is hard enough, but the honest truth, it's the easy part. It's the fun part. The marketing and the selling and the finding of an audience, I have to tell you, is the least enjoyable, aspect of the whole gig for me. It's, I would rather not spend all that time on social media. I would rather, actually be writing. Mind you, I have started an Instagram page for Vin. I did that about 6 months ago now.
Oh, okay. What's the Instagram page?
Vin Cooper 04.
Vin Cooper 04. There was 3 before you even got there, was there?
No, 04. He is an 04, which is that's his rank in the public service.
Ah, okay.
He's a major.
Oh, right. Okay. So which agency is he working with?
He's with the United States Air Force, but he's in the Office of Special Investigations, the OSI.
Okay, that's good. It's okay. Well, that makes sense. What his handle is on Instagram. Then I have to go and check him out now and go and follow him, see what he's up to.
That's been a lot of fun. You have to kind of follow it. So the. Like, do
you tell a story with the pitch? Are you telling a story with the pictures?
Definitely. So you have to start at the beginning. It's a bit of an intro to him, and then it follows roughly the trajectory of Kingdom Come until the more recent posts. I sent him off on holidays after Kingdom Come finished, and now and then a bit of training, and now I put him in a submarine and he's off somewhere and haven't quite decided where he's going to go.
Okay, so there's a lot more Vin Cooper books coming up.
There are, but I have not begun the next one because I've been spending the last 6 months writing a film.
Okay, well, that was something else I was going to touch on. Before we talk about the film, I want to talk about the documentary that you did. Which I had a bit of a read about it, and and the history behind what it was all about. It was about a murder case in the Deep South. Do you want to sort of enlighten on that a little bit, or what prompted you to get hold or to hear about this case in America and then want to do a documentary about it and put your own money into it and back it?
Yeah, okay, I'll start with that second question first. Okay, so the story is in 2014, a film shoot was set up on railway tracks on the property of the world's biggest paper mill company. The railway tracks were on a trestle bridge. It was a biopic about the Allman Brothers, and it starred William Hurt as the main Allman character, and that's a sort of an iconic band in the American sort of rock scene.
Yeah.
And a freight train came along ultimately and ran through the set, and a camera operator or camera assistant was killed. The ensuing investigation very quickly pointed its finger at the director of the movie, and the director ultimately took a plea, served a year in prison, and is still on probation. The reason I got involved in this was in 2006, I wrote a book about the downing of Korean Airlines Flight 007 in Russia.
Yeah.
And a producer, writer by the name of Jody Savin, contacted me and said, would you be interested in selling the film rights? So, yes, of course. Money, you bet. Film, fabulous.
Yes.
Let's do it. So I, formed a bit of a relationship with Jody and got to know her husband. Well, didn't get to know her husband, Randall Miller, but he, sometimes would answer the phone or the Skype or whatever, and I would, the conversation went something along the lines of, "Hey, Randy, is Jody home?" So anyway, I knew about the existence of Randy, and then when this accident happened many years later, I read about it in the paper. And I knew they were going to shoot a film because I spoke to Jody about, a film they'd done in Savannah called CBGB. And I knew they were going to do some other, biopic about, the Allman Brothers. But that's pretty much all I knew. And then I read about this terrible accident in the Herald. And it talked about, Randall Miller knowing that he didn't have permission to be on the tracks, but he went out there anyway and shot and stole the shot. And as a result of his irresponsibility, a young woman was killed by a train that came along. And I thought it was a very weird thing because, Randall Miller is a nice guy. And as far as I know, family man, and he's standing out there on the tracks with everyone else on this set. I mean, if you didn't have permission to be out there and you were stealing a shot, there's no way you would be standing on the tracks because a train is going to come along and you're going to be in trouble. So I thought that photo just didn't gel with the story as far as I could see. And so I contacted Jodie, and she didn't want to talk to me, and she didn't want to talk to me for months and months and months until after Randall took the plea, or actually on the eve that Randall took the plea, which was a year later.
Yeah.
I was shocked, because I thought, well, you're taking a plea, you're essentially agreeing with the prosecution that you did this, and that was terrible. Anyway, I contacted, Jodie 6 months later when Randy was in prison, to say, what's the story? Just can you tell me the story? And she sent me a few things, a few depositions, and I was shocked when I saw the depositions because the three people who said they knew about the lack of permission also said they didn't tell Randall Miller. So the director was essentially jailed for something just on the surface of it that he didn't appear to have done. So I went, well, that's wrong. And I'm just stupid enough to, and I guess loyal enough to go, well, I'm going to fix that. So I started digging into it. And the more I dug into it, the more the whole thing looked corrupt and shady. And indeed that particular law enforcement, district attorney and the sheriff's department, they're under a cloud from several other incidents, which are, crazy wrong. And
it sounds like one of those things you see on TV where they're just so determined to get a conviction that they overlook evidence that basically opposes what they're thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, they want a quick conviction. It's all about conviction. It's all about getting result. They don't actually care too much about what that result is, but what they didn't want was for it to be any local person, certainly no one immediately from the local area, and then they were desperate for it to not be someone from Georgia. Yeah. And the director, who's basically a Jew from Hollywood, they all these Southern Baptists went, he's our man. And for all sorts of reasons. I mean, I called it the Borat effect. Okay, so in South Georgia, in that part of the world, they talk real funny. Well, I think they talk real funny. I can't actually do the accent, but they talk real. Okay, so they think I talk funny. Yeah. So I called it the Borat effect because I went down there and I started asking all these questions, and people would tell me stuff that they're telling me, and I'm going, do you realize what you're saying? And I think they told me things that they probably shouldn't have because they just thought I was some cute, weird being from outer space or something, or from, that country, Australia, in the middle of Europe. I don't know, or, well, they think it's Austria. Or, anyway, yeah. So, for example, I'll give you an example of that. I asked the judge, who was the presiding judge on Randall Miller's case, and he said, I asked him about the sentence. Did you think it was a fair and just sentence? And he said, well, the sentence that was imposed was an illegal sentence. and I go, but you imposed it. And it's yeah. So, I mean, so many things are wrong about this. The prosecution said that they didn't have permission to be on the property. Well, they did. They actually had a contract with the pulp mill, which was ignored. The lady from the marketing, the communications director, who was the liaison between the pulp mill company and the film company, took a location scout onto the tracks 2 weeks before filming. Nothing about there being a problem or an issue. They knew exactly where the film crew wanted to shoot. It was just such a total stitch up. And I think the reason they, apart from the fact that Randy wasn't from around there, is they think that a director is the boss. Well, if you're on a film set, and unless you probably might think that the director is the boss, but more often than not, well, in fact, on all the sets I've ever been on, it's the first AD, the first assistant director, who is the boss. That's the person who's telling everyone to go everywhere. You do that, you do this, you do that. Quiet, turnover, action, for example. That's all the first assistant director. But that was a little bit too complicated for the assistant district attorney, who ignored all that and wanted the director. And in fact, he was asked by in deposition that the district attorney was asked whether he knew what a director did on set, what was his roles and responsibilities, and the district attorney said that he went to the Directors Guild of America in California to find out what it was exactly that a district attorney, that a film director did and was responsible for. This turned out to be a lie. He admitted the following day to the attorney off camera.
Oh, he didn't do that.
That he never went.
Oh, right. Okay. So just made it up.
Just on camera on the day. That was a curly question, and he just lied about it. And the number of lies that you see getting peeled back on the documentary they're flabbergasting. The reality is these guys decided Miller, and they also were not going to go to trial.
Yeah.
And they made real certain that a trial never happened, and that Randy was screwed.
So, and you were saying that social media and the media in general had a lot to do with the case itself.
Yeah, it gets very complicated, but yes, I mean, the trade media and social media went to town on Randy Miller. I think.
And when you mean the trade media, are you saying like the film industry trade media?
Yeah, Variety, Okay, so what goes on in Georgia is it's a right-to-work state. So what that means is that if you go, look, I want to work on a film set, they go, oh, fine, no problem, off you go. Join the union and you go. Now, you can't do that in California, right? You have to be trained. You have to go to all the safety classes. You can't just walk on and do the job.
Yeah.
Whereas it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Things like The Walking Dead is shot in Georgia. I mean, so many things are shot in Georgia. It's a huge industry, and they didn't want the inadequacy of their crew put under the microscope, and so they went out of their way to make sure that Randall Miller was blamed and none of their crew were blamed, and Variety and
so the crew were from Georgia. It was just the crew were from Georgia. It was just the director that came in from out of town.
Yes.
Okay.
So Randy brought a few people in, but essentially the crew were all from local people. Like the location assistant Charlie Baxter, who was supposed to get permission from the railroad company to be on those tracks, specifically from the railroad company, didn't tell the producers that he didn't have permission, and there was a pre-production meeting the morning of that fatal shoot in Savannah prior to the crew going to the location, and he could have said something then. He could have said, "Well, I actually don't have permission," and then the crew would never have gone.
Yeah.
Because you just you can't do something so dangerous and not have permission. So look, the whole thing was a joke.
So would you say that your documentary though has opened it back up to for people to look at it differently, and to see the truth?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people actually from that area who are recognizing or starting to realize that their elected officials are dodgy. Like, for example, in that particular town, Jessup, Georgia, the pulp mill company is called Rainier Performance Fibers. Now, Rainier, as I said, the world's largest pulp mill company, are the biggest employer in town.
Okay.
Okay. Second biggest employer is the jail.
Yeah.
And the there's a school and the fast food industry. They're the only other employers. And
So it's a relatively small town.
It's a small town, and the county elects its district attorney and sheriff.
Okay. Yeah.
So the pulp mill, who essentially, put the money behind the candidates they want elected, get the candidates they want elected, and those candidates don't rock the boat.
So it sounds like what you see when you're watching some of these TV shows and they're in these small towns, and there's that little bit of small town mentality, I suppose, where anybody that's from outside that town is actually looked upon like you're a bit of an alien.
Well, that's very true.
Did the documentary go cold? Well, we should mention that because people are listening to this going, well, what the hell is the name of the documentary? So It is Trial of Midnight&nbsp, Railroaded in the Deep South.
Yeah, it's been doing very well on iTunes. So I think it was in America, it was up to 10 or 8 or something in all documentaries, which is pretty good.
So when did it actually come? When was it released?
In February.
Okay, so it's very recent as well. So it's doing quite well then.
Yeah, and I think because of this, close up, what it's about is about this director. But I think the broader view of what the documentary is about is a commentary on the American legal system. Now, I know that's a well-worn path, right? With like Making a Murder, for example. I think no one's going to be surprised when you see when someone says, "Yeah, Southern justice in America is small Southern state justice is crooked," but this is a dissection of just how crooked it is, and the characters there are unbelievable.
So it's like I said before, when you're watching a TV show and everything, but when you're watching a TV show and it seems like, oh, this is too outrageous, it couldn't actually be like that. You're saying it actually is like that in some places.
Yeah. So just a couple of things. The captain of detectives, Joe Nair, said that the lead investigator on this case took a bribe and then spent the money on, house repairs and so forth.
Yeah.
Don't know who he took the bribe from, but I suspect probably the company that is, as the mayor says, you just ask them for money and they give it to you. That's Rainier. And the Ted Mathis, the assistant coroner who attended this tragic accident, was not revealed to anyone until I found this out. Not only was he the assistant coroner, he was also a deputy sheriff in the county, and also the head of Rainier's ecological department.
So he held a few important positions.
So he worked for the the landholder. He worked for the pulp mill, and he worked for the sheriff, and he worked for the coroner. I mean, it's just so crooked.
Say, for example, they didn't nail the director. What would be the next thing to do? Would the mill itself had been sued, or is that what they were trying to avoid? Did you dig into that to find out why did they target him and not somebody else? Was it because of financial ramifications?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, they're under pressure for EPA reasons. They dump a lot of pollutions into the Altamaha River there, and the river keepers, got them under the magnifying glass. I mean, having someone like Trump elected is a godsend for a company like Rainier because he doesn't care about pollution.
Yeah.
But it was clear from the communications director of Rainier, Tina Kicklighter, that the pulp mill company Rainier wanted this film to go ahead. They desperately wanted it to go ahead because of a fantastic PR story and one they dearly needed. And they were prepared to cut all sorts of corners to make sure it went ahead. But then when the shit hit the fan, they just ran for the hills and covered up their tracks. I found there was a videographer at the scene when the train hit the crew,
Yeah.
whose camera was turning the whole time, and I slowed the film down frame by frame, and I found 150 meters away, up the track, were a couple of golf carts, and actually not a couple, one golf cart.
Yeah.
And it with some people standing beside the golf cart, and I sort of dug into this, and I found that in that golf cart was the managing director of the pulp mill and his senior senior projects manager, and they had both left when the accident happened. They both took off in that golf cart and beat a hasty retreat out of there, and they were never interviewed by law enforcement. Their witness statements were never taken. As far as the record shows, they were never there, except I found 2 independent witnesses to put them at the scene.
So when you were doing this documentary, at any time did you feel for your own safety that you're in a small town and like I said, you see these things in the movies? Did any time you sort of feel, oh, my life is in jeopardy here? Or
yes,
you did?
A couple of times. One time I got a call from a guy who threatened to come and strangle me. Another time I was staking out a house, and I was I thought I was about to get rammed, but a big, American pickup.
Yeah.
The road, and came to a skidding halt in front of my rental car.
So was this all just intimidate? Were they just trying to intimidate you?
Yeah. Wearing like a sidearm, and he didn't draw the pistol, but his hand was on it, and he wanted me to get the hell out. And it was. I was very nervous about it. I got a friend who's a sheriff's deputy in Florida, and he said that I was taking a hell of a risk, and that he wouldn't have been surprised if I'd woken up and found my hire car with a blood stain, on the front and a dented panel, and that I would be arrested for hitting some vagrant. He said that stuff happens, and just to shut me up or get me out or.
So after doing this, would you do something like this again? Like doing this whole investigative thing? It sounds like the journalist in you came out. You were like an investigative journalist.
I felt like a character in one of my books, to be honest.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like you could do a documentary or film on making the documentary.
Yeah, we could actually. But I just want to get on with my life.
Yeah. Did it suck a lot? Yeah. Like, I know sometimes you can.
It took 3 years. I didn't write a book for. It took a long time to get that latest Vancouver book out because I was working on the documentary. I haven't made any money. I've lost money on it.
Yeah. But you feel good that you actually did it, that you got to the truth, or you revealed the truth to people, even though it sucked 3 years out of your life?
Yeah, I do feel good about that. I feel bad for Randall Miller. I've come to know him really well. In fact, I've written a film with him recently because we've become very good friends. And he is an amazing character, really. I mean, if I was in his shoes, I probably would have topped myself by now. I mean,
so it didn't end his career.
It's totally destroyed so many aspects of his life and continues to do so. I mean, he's on parole at the moment, which is part of his illegal sentence. He should be on non-reporting probation, but he's still on reporting parole. Well, on a kind of parole where someone has to can turn up to his house randomly and check that he's at home. And Georgia, the law department, law enforcement down there have gone out of their way to be vindictive towards Randy and to ensure that he stays on this illegal sentence. When they sent the papers through to California, the charge that he the papers have on them that say what Randall Miller did said that he was a murderer who wantonly killed. I can't remember exactly the words, but basically he was a murderer.
So has he gone back to California, or is he still in Georgia?
Got the hell out of Georgia as soon as he could.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But he's essentially a prisoner in his own house. His reputation is destroyed. This is a guy who is a family man. He's a good guy. Could be you, could be me, could be your best mate. He's a big, gentle guy who loves making films, is passionate about films, but the character that he has been portrayed in the press and social media doesn't exist.
But you said you've done a film with him since?
Yeah. So Randall Miller and I, well, actually Randy came up with this really great idea. I can't really say what it is.
That's all right.
But it's a comedy, right? It's a comedy about a subculture, the coffee subculture.
So is this the film you're writing now?
Yeah, so we're actually about to go into production. We've got the money; it's financed. The film is financed. We're casting it at the moment.
And is it being shot in America or is it over here? It'd have to be in America. He wouldn't be allowed to leave, would he?
Yeah, it depends on the tax credits.
Yeah.
It'll either be America or London. Now, he may be able to get dispensation to leave if he comes back every 10 days or something. I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah. Can you give us a little, like when you say, so it's a comedy based around coffee culture, which is pretty funny.
I mean, you probably don't realize this, but there are people out there who are so, they're all, hipsters basically, and they are so into coffee. They have something called the World Barista Championships.
They do have that actually.
You've got to win the local, championship, and then the national championship, and the national winner of the nationals goes to the worlds, and they're like wine snobs on crack.
Yeah.
These people. And you have to make an espresso, a signature drink, which is some of the signature drinks that people have made are like science projects, and a latte, and it's just the whole. This is a sort of I guess, Pitch Perfect meets, Anchorman meets, Napoleon Dynamite, I guess. But it's been a lot of fun, and the script actually has been #1 trending script on Slated.com, which is a Hollywood writing and financing website. So
okay, so you're going to production very soon, and then you got a goal for the release for this?
Not as yet. No, I haven't talked to foreign sales yet. I mean, we're in the look. It's the tricky thing about writing a film is finding the finance. It's hard enough to write a good, successful screenplay that obeys all the rules and is still entertaining and different. But again, financing, the thing is a whole other ballgame. And most people, when they set out writing a film, they go, you know what, the stuff out there is so crap. My idea is so much better than all of that. And so when I write the script, everyone's going to see how brilliant it is and give me money to make it. That's what I guess propels most people down the screenwriting path. But the reality is you really should start with the money first. Find an idea that someone you are sure is going to bankroll, and then do work from there.
Yeah, and when you say bankrolling a film, what's the budget that you have for a movie?
It's under 10
million.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a fair whack of money.
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea is like, already if people have been willing to put $10 million together, the idea itself must be pretty good.
It's funny, comedy's hard to do, and
it's hard to do well.
It's very hard to do well. And look, this is Randy Miller's idea, and I kind of came along for the ride and learned a lot. Sort of working in his shadow. But, I sort of added my bits, which I think, kind of helped along the way. So I'm happy to take a joint credit on it.
I hope for Randy Miller and yourself, all everything that he went through and the time and effort that you went through to doing the documentary, I hope that this film that you've put together is a huge success. I mean, just a massive success. And
hallelujah.
but wouldn't that be a great turnaround? Like eventually down the track you do a story about the story, and you're taking it right from the beginning of doing that movie through to what happened to him, through to doing the documentary, through to you guys putting a film together, and all of a sudden it just becomes an international blockbuster.
Well, yeah. That would be great. Me too. Good. Hey, we beat that 10-minute clock, right?
We did beat the 10-minute clock, which I think is great. Now, I've got one last question I'm going to ask you, Oh, no, actually I got two questions. One was about your books with Vin Cooper. Do people have to read from book 1 right through to book 7 that he's been in, or you can just pick up any book and you can continue on? You don't actually have to read in order.
You can. Okay, look, there are some things that this latest book gives away, but it's just the journey with this guy. It's fun. It's a good fun journey, and you can get into the latest book and then go, you know what, I'm going to start at the beginning, and it won't hurt. In fact, it'll kind of be interesting way to go through the series. But if you don't like Trump, if you think he's an idiot with kind of big hands and the best words, then you probably really super enjoy this book. If you do like Trump, if you think he's a magnificent, world leader, full of charisma, the right kind of charisma, and all the rest, then this will probably give you the shits.
Yeah, I can think of a few people that I want to get a copy of this book and give it to them that I know they're going to absolutely love. Yeah. Anyway, I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
And this is my Monday morning tip. So everybody I have on the show, I always say to them that, somebody bumps into you. It's Monday morning, and this is like a business-related tip, or it could be a writing tip. Let's use this as a writing tip because you are a famous writer. So it's Monday morning. They bump into you somewhere. Could be getting a coffee at McCafe or something like that, and they go, "Oh, you're David Rollins. I heard you on my favourite podcast, It's No Secret with Dr. T, and I'm about to go into work. I've got the morning free, and I wanna become a better writer. What's the one tip you would give me Monday morning when my butt hits the chair?"
Okay, so when most people, when you interrogate the world, you do it with the 5 senses, right? With your eyes, your sense of smell, your sense of taste, touch, hearing.
Yeah.
You've got these 5 senses. If you want to be a really good writer, you have to employ those 5 senses. So those 5 senses, so that your reader, when you write, like for example, your character might stop somewhere. What's he hearing or she hearing? What does the rain smell like when it hits the pavement? What does it sound like? What do you taste? If you employ those things in your writing, you give people a really great sense of place, and you make the character seem like a real human being because the words are interrogating the world just like you do as a human being. So I guess that's my secret sauce with writing. I always ask myself that. What's he feeling? What's he not feeling? What's he seeing, smelling, touching? And
is that what happens when something's written poorly? You're reading it and it's one dimensional. It's just words. It's not feeling, smell, touch, sound sort of built into it.
Could be. The other thing is that's my 5 senses is my secret sauce.
Yeah.
And the other thing that propels good writing along is conflict. You've got to keep serving. If like the news would be really boring if it was this good thing happened and that good thing happened.
Yeah.
No one would watch it, right? So what propels characters is conflict. What propels people's interest is, how are they going to overcome this or that? So you can't ever let your characters get comfortable. You got to keep shoving shit in their way.
Yep, that makes sense.
To overcome.
Okay, that's good advice. So if anyone's listening to this and they want to be a better writer, just take that advice. Use those 5 senses because you're listening to someone who has written 11 books, and the most recent book is called Kingdom Come, and it's available on Amazon and probably all online book platforms. I would say it's absolutely everywhere. So, David, thank you for being on It's No Secret with Dr. T. This has been fun, and I've loved getting like the, I feel like I've got the inside knowledge of the documentary of the documentary. This has been great.
Well, mate, thank you very much for having me. It's been very entertaining.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to David Rollins today. Now, I know this was a little bit different, and we weren't talking about small business and marketing like we normally do each week, but I think his story about how he became a writer and the thinking behind being a writer was really important, especially how he moved into doing the documentary and the reasons why he did it and that he wanted the truth to come out. So I thought it was a really interesting story and definitely worth sharing. So if you have any questions about this particular podcast, please send me an email, tf@tysonfranklin.com gmail.com, and I will do my best to answer it for you. Plus, if you've been enjoying this show and previous episodes, please give us a review on iTunes or whatever your favourite podcast platform is. It always puts a smile on my face. Even a review on Facebook is good enough for me. Okay, that's it from me. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.